All right, on the Mark tribe, all you folks that have salivated over this man's swing ever since you ever watched him play, we have him. There he is. If you're watching on YouTube, it is Adam Scott. Scotty, first off, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Mark. We've been trying to get together for a little bit here, so I'm glad we're doing this.
Okay, well, backstory. Okay, folks, for who don't know, in 2024 Scottish Open, Adam's in contention, had a putt on the last to post. So I was on the call as charged to go and wait with him because there was a potential playoff in the offing. And I've got a headset on and I'm standing close to Adam and there we watching the results. And in the end, Bob McIntyre makes. And so I've got to get the loser interview with Adam, which is not the funnest thing to do in the world. But he's ever gracious and good. And Adam, you're giving me great answers. And then leaving, I'm listening to stuff in my head, right, from the producer. And Adam goes to me, he goes, "Hey, love the podcast with Izzy." And is my daughter's nickname. I'm like, what? And I'm sort of piecing this all together, trying to listen. And then you said, "No, Izzy Justice." And I was like, wow, so cool you were listening. So thank you for that, man.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I'm as much into this golf as everyone else, and little bits here and there can go a long way. And I was enjoyed that podcast and took a few little pieces out of it. And not that I live by these things all the time, but sometimes there are enough inspiration to just uh, make a week of positive thoughts or something like that, and those feelings feel good for a little while and get going. And off the back of that podcast, timing wise, I started playing well there at the Scottish Open, so that was quite good.
Well, awesome. Hey, listen, I've got to ask this before we get into some of the history of what you've achieved in you're on the doorstep of the Hall of Fame, really. Yeah, I posted this on social the other day, and it was like, if there was a Mount Rushmore for smooth swingers of the golf club in the game, who would you pick? And I obviously got lots of names. Now, if I had a Mount Rushmore more for the best golf swings in the game, you'd probably be on someone's lips. So I want to ask you, if you had swings that you kind of look up to or salivate over, or you're like, well, I wish I could do that. Are there any like that? I'm interested to know.
Yeah, for sure there are. I think you know, like everything, taste changes over time. And if I went back to when I was a kid, firstly, Greg Norman was my childhood hero, and his style of play and his swing type was very appealing. That aggressive driver of the golf ball type swing, and that was really my first ever swing that I admired. Um, and then timing wise, after that, Tiger Woods turned pro in '96, and I was a 16-year-old and impressionable and a good young player. And he made such an impact immediately. And he just took that kind of aggressive modern golf swing to the next level from where Greg was with his speed and power. And again, like very appealing to me. And I think I've been impressed by players as I've played with them along the way. But then as I've learned more about the game throughout the years, as far as swingers of the golf club, I just really have ended up admiring Snead, which a lot of people do,
Mhm.
for how fluid the swing is, and Tom Watson as well. I just felt like his swing evolved as graciously as anyone's. He it doesn't look like he's tampered with it. He doesn't look like he lost his swing DNA along the way trying to get better. It just evolved so beautifully. And I think the proof in that is he was basically about to win the Open Championship at 59 years old. Truly remarkable.
Well, look, that's kind of the perfect segue, and I'm getting the cart before the horse. But you feed me up here because as I've watched you since you were a kid, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting you and you both, and now I'm watching you, and I get to call you from inside the ropes, and I used the term evergreen the other day to describe you. And Jim Nance he was like, yeah, I'm onto that sort of thing because
Mm-hmm.
as far as swing DNA goes, Adam, and as far as longevity in the game, and you mentioned Snead and you mentioned Tom Watson, I'm keen to know from you how have you discovered this fountain of youth? I'm really keen to know how you've remained true to who you are through all these years, given your stature in the game.
I think I've been, I've been really fortunate. I I had I've had a couple of long-term coaches throughout my career that I think, although very different, had similar principles that
Mhm.
worked very well with me, and that was Butch Harmon and Brad Malone.
Yeah.
And I was successful in different ways with both of them. Um, but I worked with both of them for over 10 years each, which is a fairly long time. Certainly in the modern day game, we like to change our minds a lot these days.
Discipline. I joke. I've been on the PGA Tour coaching carousel, and you get hired this morning and you fired like tomorrow after,
Yeah,
thing. So that takes a lot of
yeah,
discipline on your behalf.
yeah. But I think I was fortunate to have people that understood me well and could work through the different emotions of competitive golf, or the frustrations of competitive golf, and keep me in a good spot. And they never scared me with their teachings.
Okay.
Let's say, I have a golf instinct as well. Even though I'm getting coached, I still have a feeling of my own swing, and I think they understood that well. So that was really fortunate for me, and therefore having this kind of sustained high level of play, although not winning everything as much as I would like, but sustaining a fairly high level for a long time. I have a lot of belief that at this point in my life, I've really got to own my swing. I don't tamper with it too much. I know a lot of my tendencies, and uh, probably more work goes into uh, getting to the golf course than the swing itself. I really feel like I own it and I'm confident in it. But to swing as best I can, staying fit and supple, and watching these young guys pound it inspires me to kind of keep up, and that's what keeps me working hard.
Yeah, you inspire many with your golf swing. I got to ask this, right? Because I've been a long time coach who's turned to a microphone because the job's easier. Um, and I've worked with elites and I've worked with beginners and they're golfers of all skill stations who watch this and listen to this to improve. And we all have that moment where we're like, and we look at our golf swing like, "Oh, if only, right? If only I didn't do that. If only I could do this." You mentioned tendencies. Is there something that niggles Adam Scott a little bit?
Yeah, lots of things to the
Oh,
point. To the point, I can't even tell you the last time I really watched my swing. I don't know. I mean, I've watched a couple of swings. When I mean a couple, maybe like two or three this year that I looked at, but I won't look more than one swing. I won't slow it down and analyze it.
no, really?
I get too critical, starting with my posture. It varies so much. That frustrates me. And that's like a foundational thing too. That's so annoying to me. So I know at this point of my tendencies of my own analysis, which isn't that good, and that's probably why I'm not a golf coach either. But uh, to not look too deep. There's imperfections in everything, especially with all the good technology we have now. We can find them very easily.
No kidding. Hey, you mentioned posture. I'm still trying to get back to introducing you properly, but I'll get there. You mentioned posture, and I'll never forget. It was at Akron, Ohio, in the WGC, the Firestone event at Bridgestone, and you had won that event in the past, and you were hitting balls on the range, and I walked past you, and I was like, Adam, that looks great. And just in passing, I said, like, what are you doing? And you were like, I'm focusing on my posture. And then you said something to me that stuck, and it still to this day sticks inside, which speaks to the gravity of it, I guess. And you were like, I feel like if I get my posture in place, my golf swing takes care of itself.
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, sounds like choirs of angels. Because so many golfers, and there's a lesson in this, folks. They just like stand up to the ball, but they're more worried about swinging than setting up the golf swing. So I want your thoughts.
Mhm. Yeah, I still subscribe to that completely. For me,
Mm-hmm.
100%. That if I can maintain consistent posture, which I feel is technically sound for me and balanced, and it's going to start me in a great place. I mean, I know I've been kind of gifted with this graceful swing, all I've got to do is stand in the right place to do it. And you know, I was brought up with my dad giving me the strong fundamentals of the game, grip and posture, alignment, key things like this. And I think they're still the strongest fundamentals for someone to swing really well. So I spend most of my time working on that these days. Although there's never-ending thought about a feeling in a golf swing, or making sure it's in the right place. That just comes with the territory of being a golfer, I think. But working on those key fundamentals, posture is huge for me. Yeah. Really big, because it really just allows my body to move as freely as it can. And especially as you get older, it's harder to do that just physically, naturally. Your body just isn't as fluid as a young player's body. So when I stand in the best posture, for me, it allows me to move at the ball the best, and it's the most efficient motion.
Yeah. Hey, to that, you talk about folks are thinking golf posture. If anyone's ever stood next to an Adam Scott, it always strikes me how upright you are. And us golf folks, we live in front of ourselves with our hands together, our chests collapsed, your upper body hung over me with my big head. I mean, it's too heavy for my shoulders. And I'm turning into a turtle basically at age 54 almost. So posture is not just golf stuff, because obviously there's strength of core and such with you that's keeping you so upright as you're advancing in years now.
Yeah, I've put if I give myself a pat on the back, I think I've worked hard physically for most of my career, and in maintaining, an athletic build for golf, and trying to, complement my swing with the things I do. And I'm really aware that, when I start shriveling over and I'm going to lose it quickly, and I'm in an age where that can start happening quickly. So I'm really aware of like staying in good shape and trying to be out here as long as I can, playing at a high level.
Okay. To that, you use the term athletic. I want to build on that. Kelly Slater's been on the show, and he said to me, he goes, his surfing improved when he started becoming better at golf because of the leverage out of the ground and the balance and all that sort of stuff. Surf. So I want to ask you, has surfing, in your opinions or your experience, been beneficial to your golf swing or just your overall well-being? Because it's a hard sport in terms of balance and, of course, physical fitness, just paddling out against the waves.
It's a very hard sport. And let's put this into perspective. Kelly is the GOAT of surfing, and therefore his relative level of golf is incredibly high as well. He's one of these human beings who, whatever he does, he's so gifted at. So I'm not the GOAT of golf. Therefore, my relative level of surfing is really poor. But I think it's more of an overall well-being. I've found, after a few years as a pro, I need an escape. I need something else to get away from the game. As a younger guy, I didn't have a family. I didn't have as many things going on, and surfing was it for me. And being in the ocean, and whether I surfed well, whether I caught waves or not, but spending time in the ocean was like re-energizing for me. It was that kind of peaceful thing. I'm not a very spiritual person, but I, came out full of energy every time.
Yeah.
And that's been a constant, and I wish I could do it more often these days. But gosh, I'd hate to see my form on a board at the moment.
Well, you're a husband and a dad and a full-time golfer still, and you're doing that all very well. So let's now take a step back. Young Adam Scott growing up in Australia, father, Phil, club professional, imbues this talented young man with fundamentals and such. So now I want Adam Scott, dad, to just help viewers and listeners who might have kids, one of them may be me, who are decent at golf, insights as you look back on your childhood and the guidance you got, and just help folks to sort of manage young people playing golf. Because I think those formative, those setup years are just so important.
Yeah, if I think about it now, being a father myself, yeah, I can't credit my dad enough with
Mm,
the approach he took with me
okay.
to the game. You know, right from the beginning, but then certainly as I showed potential of being a nice young player to improving drastically and being a competitive junior. I just think he managed that so incredibly well. I never felt pushed, and somehow found most of the motivation within myself. But I'm sure there were messages he was giving me to do that. So you know, I give my dad a lot of credit for that, because I think about if I was going to push my kids or encourage them to pursue anything, I'd think back to how my dad did that. Things that stuck with me were more in my teenage years, I guess, that I remember uh, Sunday morning lying on the couch at 8:30 watching cartoons,
Yeah.
and dad coming in saying, "Are you not going to the golf course today?" And I'm like,
Like
oh,
me.
hadn't really thought about it. He said, "Well, that's one more day before you'll be great." He never said I had to go, but you know, just those kind of things. And I'm sure some days I ignored him like a teenager would, but I think there were enough days where that got me off the couch and got me to go out to the golf course. So you know, he did a nice job with that. I sat recently with a young teenager at home whose goal is to make it to college on a scholarship, and he's 13, so he's got plenty of time.
Mhm.
And uh, it might be too general, but I think, like every other sport now, the pressure is on too young. You
Okay.
know, at 13 in golf, you've got a lot of developing to still do. Uh, you know, sometimes in golf, you don't play really great at a high level till your mid 20s. You get better, you find your golfing maturity later. And to be overcoached young or overtrained in the gym while you're still growing, I think worries me. I'm not saying it's wrong, because I like some of the discipline things with that, but the overtraining young is concerning to me, and I'd be very wary of pushing too hard too young with a golfer.
There's really something to be said there. Look, I'm a recovering college golf coach, 20 something years in it.
Mm,
And it's amazing how you get the odd blue chip young man or woman that comes through there, and you can just see it at 17, 18, 19. But you're so right. And even in the pros, talk to the aspirant pros now, where it's just you got to get better every year. And everyone
yeah,
runs a different race at a different timeline, yes?
yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing, if we're talking about junior golfers, uh, is just getting out and playing some junior competitions.
Mhm.
And I think if, and I was talking to a very competent player, 3 handicap at 13, like
Wow.
everything is going great.
Mhm.
He, for him, I just feel like competing on a regular basis, he's going to learn so much himself. He already must be understanding so many things to be off three that he doesn't realize. He's just, his own knowledge is going to grow, and I think there's more chance of that falling in line later down the track than getting misguided or overtrained and burned out, potentially shooting for this line too early. That, you know, there's time in golf to mature.
I know this for certain. Maybe this may be close to my headstone one day when I pass onto the heavenly fairways. But having spent time around guys like yourself and other great golfers, and in fact, just great successes in the world from the worldly standpoint, um, I will advise people and I'll say to them, look, don't despise the failure. And because there's somewhere in the midst of that doom and gloom, there's a lesson to be learned if your mind's right. Now, here's
Mm-hmm.
you've won 30 times 32 times professionally worldwide, major champion, players champion, all this sort of stuff. But there's been some bleak times too. And you've had to navigate your way through there. So is there any insight you can share from experience?
I think these are cliche things, but golf is a lot like life. It really is. I mean, I haven't played all other sports. I've played some,
Mhm.
but golf being individual, there are support teams around professional golfers. But even if you're an amateur golfer and you don't have a coach and a psychologist and a trainer, it's an individual pursuit like life. And it's incredibly challenging. It can be very unfair. You can do all the right things, you get no results. A bit of a bad break here or there that's no fault of your own, and you find yourself in a tough spot. And I feel like the way you have to analyze that, the first couple of times it's hard to accept, for sure. But that's where you find out what you've got inside you. My first real struggle was coming to college in America. I was big fish back in Australia, and I was a very little fish when I came to the United States. And I really struggled my first 6 months at college, and came home for Christmas in Australia and was really keen not to go back.
Mhm.
But there, my dad sent me back. He said, you got to turn this around when you get back. He gave me some coaching tips while I was home, which was helpful because I hadn't seen him for a while and he was my coach at the time. But I went back and played a lot better, and overcame some of the hurdles. And I didn't realize it at the time, and I didn't realize it for a long time. But I think that really set me up for the rest of my career. That I was going to be faced with these challenges, and the next step, once I was one of the best amateur players, was I'd be a small fish again, turning professional, and had to go through that whole process again. But I was much better prepared for it. Um, and I don't know. I think it was just, there was still a belief inside me of that childhood dream to be the best player in the world that got me through any hardships. And somehow I got through that one quite easily. But then throughout my career, I found from other people that belief again, in my support teams. And like I said before, I was really fortunate to have some great people around me.
So true. In golf on the tour, we've got statistics for statistics. And
Mm-hmm.
I always pay attention to, and all you greats do this as you bounce back. Mistakes are inevitable. It's how you,
Mm-hmm.
and is it as simple as like fall down 7 times, get up 8, and you'll eventually,
I think so. I think I haven't been afraid of the failure either, which you referenced earlier. I haven't been afraid to fail. Of course, I don't want to.
yeah.
It's hard to deal with. There's been times where I've lost it on the course, and you've gone from leading a tournament to, you don't know how you're going to get it in the clubhouse. Where did it go? It's crazy. And it's these things where you have to analyze and deep dive in afterwards to figure it out, and rediscover the belief, but learn from
Yeah.
that. How does that not trigger next time in this position? How do you handle it? And there's no doubt I've had so many failures that are never seen, because you're seen when you're up in contention.
Yeah.
But the failures of missing cuts when you're never on television and you're in the back of the field, and the confidence damage that does to us, it's brutal. And you hear it from lots of guys out there. So on a weekly basis, we're having like real gut checks to get up and do it again the next week.
All right. Well, you've inspired everyone listening and watching too. Let's talk about some of the highlights, which there have been many. Um, Obviously, the 13 Masters is the highlight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
For sure.
Aside from that, is there a tournament that really stands out to you? One that you won of all of those? You're like, yeah, that one's lodged back in the memory, and it brings back good memories.
Um, Yeah, the Australian Open
That's
does
big for the Aussies. Yeah.
for sure. It was the first professional event I won in Australia, but it was nearly a decade after I was a pro. So I'd been having a go for quite a while and never won down.
Talk about falling down 7, getting up another time.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. I'd been close to winning in Australia, but um, for sure, early days, I felt a lot of pressure playing down there as one of the best young Australian players. And, um, even Aaron Baddeley won 2 Australian Opens very early in his career. And we're at the same age. We grew up playing a lot of golf in our teenage years together. And he had very early success. And yeah, I just never got across the line. And actually, that year was my worst year as a professional, 2009. And
Crazy.
at the back end of the year, I started finding a little bit of form again and ended up winning the Australian Open. And that was a pivotal moment in my career, I would say, because I really struggled on tour. I'd been playing well for a decade nearly, and that turned it all around. And I would call it set me off on the second part of my career.
Yeah, well, look, I'm looking through the list here. You win the Players in 2004. I do want to talk about that. And you talk about the second part of your career. That included a run where you spent 11 weeks on top of the world, on top of the world golf rankings. And regretfully, I think, Adam, and this is me just opining, when people think of world's number ones, right? They think of like Greg and Tiger and VJ perhaps, and DJ perhaps, and Scotty Scheffler now because there's a recency bias. But they don't think of Adam Scott as world's number one. But you were on top of that pile for a while. I mean, what did that feel like?
It was a huge accomplishment, Mark, looking back on it, just to kind of why that was such a big deal for me. I mean, it should be for anyone, really. It was a childhood dream. I was impressionable, and Greg was a dominant world number one in the 90s, and he was who I was looking at, a kid from Australia. That's always what I wanted to be. But quickly, as I got into my professional career, world number one was almost unimaginable with Tiger. Okay. But with Tiger dominating and VJ taking it for a little while, their standard of golf was incredible. Mm-hmm. So for the better part of over a decade, it was, excuse me, it was just unimaginable. And as I entered that second part of my career, I talked about, I saw it was possible again.
Yeah. Okay. Let me let you catch your breath. And I want to tee you up here. You talked about Greg and the dominant time at number one and how he was kind of a hero to you and a mentor in many respects. That 04 Players, I want to talk about your mindset because the way you bounced back from the misstep on the 72nd hole is mind-numbing to me to win. But if memory serves me, that week, Greg was a source of great counsel to you. Let's reminisce there because that was a massive win for a young man on a difficult golf course, holding off some really good players.
Absolutely, yeah. Greg had given me a lot of time as a young pro, which was incredible because he was my childhood hero. And that week, I was down the back of the range, struggling with my pitching, and Greg happened to be down the back. I think probably had a very underrated short game, but a beautiful action Greg worked with. Nice little rotation, some soft knees. His knees moved nicely. It all looked very solid. Mm-hmm. And he gave me some pitching advice and technique, and it was really about how the lower half was working in the pitching. I remember as something to focus on. I think he got me focusing on that rather than where the club was traveling, which can sometimes be hard to do, especially under the gun. And then ironically, after hitting it in the water on 18 on the 72nd hole, I had about a 35-yard pitch shot that I had to get up and down to win. And I was incredibly nervous over that pitch shot. But, just a little bit of focus on what Greg had passed on to me early in the week. I managed to hit what looked like not a bad shot up to 7 or 8 feet, and I was very pleased with that because I wouldn't like that one again.
Well, yeah, to that, you say what looked like a decent shot. Under the pressure of the moment, the flag was where it normally is, back on that plateau there. If you kind of, if you whiff one just ever so slightly, you got 30 feet instead of like 7, 8, whatever you had. So
Right.
yeah, I thought it was coming through in the clutch. I do want to take a step back though, because I'm kind of that guy a little bit, where yeah, it was a challenging conditions, always challenging golf course. I would call 18 arguably the toughest finishing hole in the global professional game. You do the tough part in my estimations. I've never never played the hole under pressure. You've hit the ball in the middle of the fairway, and I'm like, okay, this is ice right now. And then you hit it in the left hand side.
Terrible.
Help me, help us, because we've all done this. And even Adam Scott misses from the fairway, yet you gather yourself to be able to go and deliver, and not only the good pitch shot, but you bury that putt. And there was the fist pump. You could see how meaningful it was.
Oh, it's a huge event. It's such a big event, and I was at a very young point in my career. I had one on the PGA Tour, but the Players is another level. Incredibly, I remember being in that fairway, and it was kind of a 5-iron was getting back to the pin quickly.
Yeah.
I would have had to just finesse it a little bit, and the 6-iron was struggling to get up to the top shelf.
Yeah.
And I thought I would squeeze the 6-iron off the back foot a little bit. I mean, looking back on it, it's a terrible decision now. The whole world is to the right. I could have flared the 5-iron out into the stands right and had a drop and made this much, much less stressful. But I put the ball a little back with the 6-iron, probably got it disconnected off the ball and released the hands, which I've had a tendency to do throughout my career. And there it goes, left into the water. just shocking, really. But I won in the end. Not without a lot of stress.
Forever a Players champion. You're forever a Masters champion. And look, you speak of childhood dreams. I'm related to one. Okay. And not only did you win the Masters, you won the Masters for a nation in Australia. Because Greg had come short so many times. There have been so many great Australian golfers before you. And you'd been close a few times, and you start to get everyone pinning their hopes on your shoulders. And look, I want you to reminisce, but I do want you to visit the fact that you birdied the last hole to get into the playoff to start. And then eventually, I mean, the pictures are iconic, and I remember that putt made. And I think of the putt that you made there in the playoff at Augusta National and the putt you made to win the Players. Everyone's like, Adam Scott doesn't putt. I mean, you've made some clutch putts in your time, man.
Yeah, I think I've made a lot of good ones that count for a lot. I've always felt like I've had that in me. I just haven't made enough along the way to get there more often, is what I think. But putting, we could have a whole show on my career of putting. It's an incredible journey, this game, the ups and the downs and the rounds, and how you get to where you are.
Stop. I want to stop you. That's rude of me, so forgive me. But you know what? For everything you've achieved, you're forever learning. And there's so much that people can learn from your model there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still trying to learn all the time. I'm picking up stuff all the time. There's great information out there. I think at this point I have the maturity and the knowledge to know how much I should buy into something or not. But I'm really not afraid to try stuff. And this year, trying equipment was kind of my thing. I fiddled, and I'm not much of a fiddler, but I was this year. But I had strong feelings about things. I had strong curiosities. I feel like the game has changed a lot since I turned professional, and I can't live there. I can't live in 2013 when I was maybe the best player in the world at the time. because the game's moved. I've got to keep moving with it. So, you know, that curiosity, sometimes the only way to find out is to put it in play if you think it's right, and then you'll find out. And I had to find out the hard way a couple of times this year.
I want to, yeah, okay, I'm going to camp here for a second because you've stayed with the times in the modern day game. Look, you've always been long off the tee, but you've hit some tee shots over the last couple of years when I've been out there with you that I've sort of turned around and smiled and like, laughing the old dog a little bit here. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you evergreen and you've added speed to the whole thing on top of all this, you know, including the addition of the broom handle putter, which has been really, really sound.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm trying to improve like everyone else. And, you know, length is a big part of this game. You know, I'm at that point where it's probably going to stop somewhere here soon for me. But while I can, you know, I've been learning. I don't have the best understanding of all the biomechanics, but I've got some grasp of it. Somehow applying it to my natural swing DNA the best I can. You know, and simply some of my speed over the last couple of years that I've maintained or maybe gained a little bit came from working on rhythm more than anything. Not a position, not gym training, nothing other than rhythm, and then my body moving just a little more efficiently, and like my natural swing DNA getting the most ground force. But I mean, I never think of ground force, but I understand where all the speed's coming from. But I'm not forcing that to happen. I'm trying to find a way to gain by not doing so much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, look, there's something to be said for efficiency and just hitting the thing squarely. And if
Yeah.
there's one thing you do, you hit the middle of the bat all the time.
Recently it feels like that for sure, Mark. Recently it does. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with how I've been playing lately.
No, I'll say so. Okay, let's get back to the Masters.
Yeah.
Look, it's a win for the ages. I remember the pictures. The final day was challenging with the weather and such. And oftentimes the Masters, it seems like it's such a celebration and it's a lifelong achievement when you've won, but it's grueling. And that tournament, you kind of every shot feels to me, and I'm on the outside of the ropes, like it's always on the knife edge, and the pressure is immense. And so I just want you to revisit that a little bit and just thoughts and memories and stuff that sort of come to mind, please.
Yeah, if I think about that last day, I mean, going out to the course, I felt I had a great chance. I was runner up 2 years earlier to Charles, who birdied the last four. That year, I stood on the 17th tee with a one-shot lead, finished 4-4 and lost by 2. No one had ever birdied the last 4 holes to win. And not that I felt robbed, but I felt I was close.
Wait. And he chipped in on one from off the right side of the green, which is impossible. And he holed out on first, by the way.
Yeah. It was his day. You could say it was his day. Yeah. So, you know, I felt I was close, and there was a certain level of comfort developing for me at Augusta National. I felt I had a great chance that Sunday. I'd been in control of my game all week. The front 9 on Friday was the only time I felt a bit wobbly, but I corrected on the back 9, and Saturday was a good day. So I was feeling good. I bogeyed the first, but I've had so many good rounds bogeying the first. It was almost like a reset, a quick, hard reset on the second tee. That was really good. I played so solid. I didn't really make anything all day. I was never leading all day, or I didn't feel like I was leading, or maybe it was I never felt like I put myself in that position where like I got in front of myself. I'm going to win the tournament because I'm leading. Or that thought came in my head on the second shot on 17. That's when it was real, and I think that was really fortunate. However it was, I don't think it was incredible mental strength or control to not do that. But that was the moment when I needed to knuckle down and now hit the shots to win the Masters. If I had that from the first tee, I think it would have been too much to get around that golf course with that pressure. So that was fortunate. It was late in the piece for me, and then I hit some good shots coming in for sure.
Okay. The putt, and I'm getting somewhere with this question. Um, everyone listening to this has had like that putt for anything to win something, and as kids, we'll
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and more often than not, we don't make it. But you've got one there to win the Masters. So you hit the thing. Did you, when it came off the face, did you know, okay, this is good? Or was it a few feet from the hole before it's in? I want to know that before I follow up the question, please.
The playoff putt, you mean?
Playoff putt, yeah.
It was a good putt.
Okay.
It was struck confidently, for sure. I think it carried more pace than if it wasn't in the playoff.
Okay.
Is how I felt I was watching it. But it was a good putt. I don't think I'd ever had a putt up there in that part of that 10th green before. So, I was watching it. But off the face, for sure, it had a chance. Halfway, no doubt it had a chance, and then managed to catch a bit of that edge and go down.
Celebration was memorable. I want to know this. Now let's back up. Preparing for this putt. You've got the putt to win now because Cabrera was in with 4.
Mm-hmm.
Something short for 4 left. My memory fails me. But now you got the putt to win. The mental preparation, the emotional preparation. What's a deep breathing routine? Give me, everyone uses these cliches and stuff. I want to know where you were prior to that.
I think I was in a good space. I remember, just quickly to set it up from my side of things, getting a little nervous going to the first playoff hole after finishing regulation and driving back down the hill and getting to 18. But got that tee shot away and then was back in the flow of playing for the day after a little break, and played some good shots up 18, a good shot off 10, a great shot, best shot of my life, I think, into 10 to that spot, given the circumstances, the hook lie, little hold into a back left pin to 10 feet maybe. And then the read was the big thing on that putt, and I've talked about it before, but Steve Williams was caddying for me. We both were reading the putt. I said, I think it's breaking a cup. What do you think? He said, I think it's breaking 2 cups. Okay. It breaks a lot, Adam. And I said, have you had this putt? Have you seen this putt before here?
Is this a dialogue before you go ahead, really?
Yes. Because, that's a big difference. That's 100% more break than I've read. We're not like, is it right edge or just outside? We're now talking about four or so inches difference in read. And he said, Adam, you have to believe me, it breaks a lot up here. And I said, okay. And, we had a good thing going at the time. We communicated really well, especially that day in particular. And, I put trust in that read and I put it out there, and I still, like I said, I had some speed on it, and it's got in there somehow. Thank God.
Oh, no kidding. I mean, what a victory. Like I say, you're playing with the pressure of a nation on your shoulders. And speaking of now, we're on the doorstep of, I think it's your 11th President's Cup appearance. Your first one was in South Africa, which is fan court, what was it, 03, I think it was?
Yeah.
And the pressure of a nation. And I'll never forget how much admiration I had for you, because a couple seasons ago, we chatted at Eastlake where you win the Tour Championship. And you like, my goal was to prove to or earn my spot on the team and not have Captain Trevor use a
absolutely.
Now you come back a couple seasons later and you basically forced your way, and you're one of the stalwarts now leading a fun young team against the Americans and pressure of the nation. Let's talk about dealing with the pressure, please.
Yeah. Well, in relation to the Masters, it had just become a thing, after the 90s, really, with Greg at the Masters. I mean, it was one of the last mountains of sport for an Australian to climb. We're a proud sporting nation, much like South Africa. and we are champions at most things at some point, but had never won the Masters. So that became a big thing throughout my career. And every year I went there, every Australian dealt with the same thing. So the Masters in Australia and for a lot of places, you know, transcends golf. And if you're a sports fan, you tune in into the Masters, you know the music, and the nation somewhat stops on a Monday morning in Australia for the final round of the Masters, if an Australian's in contention, for sure. So that was a big hurdle. This year, moving into coming to the President's Cup, of course, there was motivation to make that team, but I'd been just not quite putting it into gear all year, and time was running out. And again, much like a couple years ago at Quail Hollow, I really didn't want to have my mate Trevor have to justify a pick on this old boy. And you know, I managed to get a spot on that team, earn my spot on that team through automatic qualifying, and I felt similar this year. I felt like I was playing good enough to contribute to this team this year, but you know, it's a tough position as a captain when you feel like you have to justify a pick, and I wanted to take myself out of that conversation, and fortunately put it in gear there at the Scottish Open, and worked my way up, and in the end qualified quite easily, which is great, because now I feel like I'm coming in, I can really contribute to this team, win some points in Montreal, and hopefully be part of be a contributor to us winning the cup for the first time in 26 years. It'll be.
Yeah, look, it's going to be exciting. Okay, a couple quick questions, and then I'll let you go. Thank you for your
time. No problem.
Reference the second shot to the 10th in the playoff at Augusta National. You got the hanging live ball above your feet, back right flag. You carve a little medium iron in there. 6 iron, yes?
6 iron. Yeah, 6 iron.
Like, that could have been the best shot I've ever hit. Is that the best shot you've ever hit, or is there anything else that stands out?
I've hit a couple long irons that I think are really superb, but you know, they're not all captured on television, so they live in my mind. But really, given the circumstance, that's the best shot I've ever hit. I think that was as pure as it gets. You know, when I was a kid, I think of shots like Faldo hit his chicken wing 5 iron into 15 at Muirfield, and you know, like that was the greatest shot that I saw as a teenager, and everyone couldn't stop talking about it. That's how I feel, at least about my own shot for myself on that shot.
No doubt. On the flip side of that coin, is there a shot you wish you had back? And while you think, I want people to, I'm going to let Adam think for a minute. I asked this question on the Mark Tribe members because I want you to realize that this legend of the game even hits bad shots. And that the overriding lesson for everybody here, even someone, as you use the word graceful, elegant, sweet swinging, you know, it looks like you fell out of heaven swinging a golf club. Even you've hit shots that you want.
Well, I've hit awful shots, but ones that have, yeah, look, I probably, I don't know which one. I could pick any of the shots on the last 4 holes at Lytham. I'd probably
go there.
Probably the 18th tee shot, because that was my worst decision. You know, I picked completely the wrong club. My process there was poor, and it cost me really the Open. Anything but in those bunkers, please.
Lytham, for those who don't know, it's littered with coffin bunkers down every fairway. They're like staggered.
Yeah.
And you were playing with a lead there. What, till like the 16th hole, I think you had on that.
Well, I had a 4-shot lead with 4 to play and bogeyed all 4 holes. And it's hard to, and didn't hit that many bad shots. Didn't hole a couple of putts from in close for par. And then I reacted completely. I was playing with Graham McDowell, and he flared a 3-wood out to the right off the tee, and it was not a very nice shot, but it was absolutely fine. you know, there was a bit of room out there. And instead of hitting the iron like I did, or actually in the first round, I hit driver past all the bunkers. I kind of got frazzled in my brain and thought I'll just do like that. And I pulled 3-wood and tried to cut it off the bunker and just dead flushed it straight into the bunker. Brought the bunkers into play, and I hit a pretty good third shot in there to about 10 feet, but missed the putt to get in a playoff with Ernie. That was a tough one to swallow. That's a tough one.
I do, for me, because I was there teaching a young man who was playing, my overriding memory was Ernie hugging you after the whole thing. So I guess.
I think at the moment, because Ernie's been such a good friend to me for a long time, it was the only thing that helped me process it at the time and keep it together. I've just admired him and his game so much. I got to play with him a lot through peak years, and he was so great, and Tiger just kept beating him for a lot of time.
Times in 1 year.
Yeah, really, you know, so that was if anything was helpful at that moment getting over it. There was some level of me that I was pleased for Ernie. I think I don't know, you'd have to ask him how fulfilling it was to win another major at that point in his career, but it certainly you felt like he deserved one. I didn't really want to be the guy to cough it up, but you know, it really motivated me. And then you look, 8 months later, I won the Masters, and you know, that's how my story went.
Well, look, you've been so full of grace to come on, share your story with everybody, be so candid with your insights and your help for people. I want to close with this, Adam, because people, you can't follow him on social media because he doesn't do any. If you had to leave us with a parting shot, let's say that thing that you know for sure, because now we're both elevated in years and we've got the benefit of wisdom and experience. Is there something you know for sure when it comes to like doing this golf thing properly?
Oof, that's a big question. I think I know myself well now, and I would encourage everyone in what they're doing, you know, to look inside themselves for the answers as much as they find it elsewhere. You know, I really think I've seen so many people that are so much stronger willed than me, more talented than me, all these things. We all have so much inside. And, you know, if you can, of course, we learn a lot from outside, but, you know, in the end, you'll find it inside. You'll find the happiness, you'll find the success, you'll find all those things that'll come from within. It's all within us. And I think I remind myself of that on the course, because there are times certainly where it's been visible to others I lacked the self-belief, and then when I went in and found it in there again, that's when it came out in my golf anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, ever humble, one of the great champions, Adam Scott, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you very much.
Mark, thanks. It was nice to catch up with you. Thanks, mate.